You're in Chicago, yes?
I'm in Chicago. I'm in the burbs,
Okay.
northwest
The
suburbs.
burbs. Okay. I have a personally important question / opinion I want to get from you. Lou Malnati's, overrated, underrated, appropriately rated.
I think it's the best Chicago style pizza. I don't. I usually eat it when people come to town and they want Chicago style pizza. Other than that, we're like doing DiGiorno or something at home. But yeah, I think it's the best. It's there's Gino's East, there's Giordano's, there's several others. I think Illuminati's the best.
Oh, I have been to Chicago twice, but I've not actually gotten in person a deep dish Chicago pizza. But my husband's boss at Christmas time ships us frozen Lou Malnati's, and one of my guilty pleasures in life. I love frozen pizza. I love it. I love DiGiorno, like you said, all of it. And Lou Malnati's is so good. So I wanted to see if it was as good in Chicago from a real Chicagoan.
Yeah. If you were actually, if someone was from Chicago, they would not call me a real Chicagoan because, I don't live in the city proper. I live in the suburbs, but I've been living around Chicago, like within 5 hours my whole life, except for a short stint in Houston. So
Okay.
I feel like Chicago's always been the big city that we're closest to.
Nice. Awesome. So you've spent about over 40 years in ministry on staff, either as a leader, executive pastor, and now you are you have your own consulting firm, Leading Smart, where you are coming alongside pastors and churches to help as just a really a trusted advisor and a consultant. After I read your ebook, 40 Lessons Over 40 Years, and also just from listening to your podcast with you and Holly, from where I sit as someone who has never worked in ministry, there doesn't seem to be much of a difference between ministry and business. Like even in your ebook, I felt like every time I read the word ministry or pastor, you could swap it out with business and leader and the exact same things would apply. So I'm curious, before we dive in, because a lot of the listeners are in the leadership, the secular space, just want to like clarify, where am I right in that and where might I be totally wrong?
I think you're mostly right in that. Especially on the side of ministry that I've been working in my entire life, which is kind of the operational executive side. Okay. So in a lot of ways, I mean, the issues, the problems, the challenges, the opportunities are very similar when you've got, people and finances and buildings and processes and systems. You're dealing with a lot of the similar things as you are in business. I think the things that, a senior pastor, a teaching pastor, a lead pastor, they're diving into theology. Mm-hmm. They're figuring out, prayerfully, spiritually, what should the vision be? How are we going to take people from where they are to where we want them to be? So some of that stuff is going to differ. But I think on the business side, executive side of things, there's a whole lot of similarities. I've worked in organizations that were as small as where I was like the fourth, 4 out of 4 staff people, and as large as the largest organization, we had 495 on staff, largest church, I should say. So, and everything in between. So, and there's a lot of similarities. I would agree.
Yeah, people from a leadership standpoint, we've still got all the people things, the people problems, conflict. We got drama. We've got budgets. We've got KPIs probably, like we're still trying to grow the church, swap out. Okay. I'm glad to know that my instincts were right in that.
And I saw you do a bunch of work with culture and health of organization and working, all that kind of stuff is absolutely, 1-for-1 swappable. If the staff isn't healthy and just because there's, a bunch of people who are committed to a cause or a mission outside of themselves doesn't mean they're healthy people. So you're constantly trying to develop people and keep a healthy team and figure out who's in the right seat and organize your meetings so that they make sense, so that we're, the working genius, so that we're not frustrating people on whatever type of meeting this is if that's not who they are. So I think a lot of that stuff definitely carries over.
Nice. Okay. I'm curious, in the ministry pastoral world, if there is a term, maybe an unofficial term, but a term for that moment when a pastor is giving a sermon and they say something like really, really awesome, and you get that audible like reaction from the congregation, either like a or a yeah or like a preach or is there an unofficial or official term for that moment?
When we're in like debrief conversations, like after a weekend or after sermons, usually someone brings it up and says, "Man, that was really a moment," or like people really leaned in when you were talking about that, or when you said that, or when you made that point or told that story. So I don't know if there's a term for it, but that's often how we talk about it.
Nice. Well, I had quite a few of those moments going through the 40 Lessons in 40 Years ebook. So I thought I'd share a couple of those with you. They were all fantastic, but there was some where it was a verbal yes from me as I was reading it. What gets celebrated gets repeated. Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh man. Sometimes the most strategic thing you can do is say no.
Yeah.
You can't.
It's hard to get
Go ahead.
teams to do that, right?
Oh, yes. It's hard to get myself to do that. I just read the book called Essentialism. Oh, it's all about less but better and saying no, and it rocked my world. So yes, so that was one most strategic thing you could do is say no. You can't microwave trust. That one hit hard as a facilitator. Sometimes and as a consultant, we come in and we really only spend 4 hours, maybe 2 days with the team. And in the grand scheme of things, that's a microwave moment.
Yeah.
So that one hit hard for me. Everyone is an interim. Whoa, man, including you. 2 more. Legacy is the leadership you leave behind. And I love this one so much. I might invite you to come back so we can talk about that, because I don't think that's talked about too often enough. It's like, what is the legacy you're leaving on the people that leave and go off?
Yeah.
Love that one.
Yeah. It's good.
It's good. Meetings reveal your culture. That was another one.
Yeah. I work with a lot of organizations, churches right now, specifically helping them. They don't usually bring me in because they think their meetings are a mess, but I find it out when I get there and then able to help them kind of like, okay, there are better ways we can do these, folks, because everyone's dreading, the day that's packed with meeting. And it's like, this doesn't have to be a dreaded day. Like, we can actually set this up so it's actually life-giving and productive, and we know what to expect, and we know what the purpose of this is, and it doesn't go too long. Yes. All the stuff.
Yes. Okay. The biggest moment, lean in moment, as you call it, that my reaction wasn't like, yes, it was, ooh, which piqued my curiosity is lesson number 6, which is longevity comes from rhythms and not grit. Longevity. And that word piqued my interest, because I don't know about you, but I feel and have seen a lot of times when leaders actually do slow down and take the time to invest in themselves and their team, whether it's through a training, a workshop, coaching, reading a book, listening to a podcast, it is in service in what's urgent and right now. And it's in service of something going on with the company or the team. And when leaders think longevity, they might immediately be wired to think, okay, what's the long term for the company, for the strategy, for the path up the ladder, for my career plan. So I'm curious, unpack longevity. Why was this lesson important for you to include?
Yeah, I mean, it probably, I probably would not have written that one after 15 or 20 or 25 years, but I think like the further I get into my career, my work, like the just more I'm aware of the importance of the long game. Like, if we're building people, we're building this organization, we're being developed and building ourselves for the long game ultimately. And I think we get and especially, churches I've worked in where it's like, there's just, they're fast growth, and, you've got 1,000 more people this Easter than we had last Easter, and everything becomes like immediate, urgent. Like, we've got to get this right. Everything has got to be better than the last time we did. And there's just a sense of like just kind of chasing short-term success, even though that short-term success is lined up exactly with the mission and it's what we're trying to accomplish. It's not sustainable. And I was in an organization that was up and to the right for 18 years until it wasn't. And it's like, you're kind of always like, you're building, you think, you think everything you put your hand to is gold because it just keeps working and working and working and working. But it's not, and you can keep that going for a while. We kept it going for a long while, but eventually, that bell curve of every organization where it's like, okay, if we got to build this for long-term health for the individuals that are involved, as well as for the organization itself. And in my work with churches, churches are infamous for just asking way too much for the average person that is attending is actually able to do. Be in a small group, read your Bible every day, be an amazing husband or wife and parent, serve twice a week, come twice a week. It's just like most normal humans can't do all that. And we're making it unsustainable because we're not thinking like we want to develop these people, again, for the long haul. I keep thinking, using that word, the long game, not just these short spurts.
Oh, so interesting. So it's longevity, not only in consideration of the attendees, your members, but also for your team, also for yourselves. Like there's a couple of different things to consider when thinking about the long game.
Yeah, my focus has almost always been on the team.
Okay.
And so like I just feel like the healthiest organization is going to be because they have a healthy team and a healthy whole staff, and that's only going to be true if they have a healthy lead team. Mm-hmm. And so if we if we focus on the health of the lead team and get them into like the right posture and space and mind of like, okay, let's build people let's like have an organization where people stay and they love to be here and they're culturally engaged. And that's going to help us ultimately accomplish our mission, which in the church is seeing people's lives transformed. But I think that doesn't happen without a healthy organization, a healthy team inside.
Yeah. In that specific section in the ebook, you mentioned that you've known a lot of leaders who ran hard for a decade and then crashed. I'm curious if are you one of those leaders? Is this a lesson that you learned firsthand through failures and mistakes along the way? Or is this something that you observed in a lot of others?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm a youngest child, and so I think I learned a lot by observing. So watching my brother, who's 5 years older, like, oh, I don't think I want to go down that path or through that door. That didn't serve him so well. So I think it's been from just watching, and I've gone through seasons of definitely of I wouldn't call it burnout, but seasons of exhaustion, and but watching in my work with churches, just watching. Leader after leader after leader, it just seems like that, man, they're just the next hottest thing. And then until they, make a choice. I think in, and this may be true in all organizations, but for sure in churches, success brings isolation. And it brings loneliness. And then I think that can creep into exceptionalism as leaders, thinking we're the exception. To the things that we say you need in your life to stay whole and healthy, and then we kind of like excuse ourselves from some of those things because I think maybe the spotlight got a little too bright. So I'm always, having seen that happen so many times, I'm always watching. I'm a huge believer and passionate about pouring into young leaders and developing them. I'm also passionate about like, man, let's not shine that light on them too brightly too soon, because until that kind of like core integrity, some of that core stuff is built, it's just they'll crumble under the weight of the pedestal.
Success brings isolation. That's really powerful. I'm kind of obsessed with this concept of like personal longevity. And interesting, you're saying, hey, let's maybe not shine a light on the young leaders too quickly. Don't put them in too quickly. Like, let's groom them in. Let's make sure we're developing in a very healthy way. But this personal longevity as a leader, and you say longevity comes from rhythms, not grit. Grit. That was interesting choice of words. So I'm curious, what why is grit a default over like healthier
Yeah,
rhythms?
grit's definitely not bad. I love it when, I have gritty people on the team and they're just gonna, so it's not bad. It's just, I mean, to me, grit is just, you showing up day after day after day and you're going to get it done. And like in the working genius, you've got the tenacity piece. You're going to get it all the way to the finish line. You're going to push through when other people are tired. You're going to show up. None of that's bad. I just think like building for the long haul requires rhythms. It requires rhythms of rest, which may require what you said earlier of like saying no sometimes, of having some really appropriate boundaries so that our kids still like us when they're 16 or 18. Or my kids are 25 to 32. So like some of the things I do some of the things I do like that I'm maybe most that people would think of me as is like work related. Some of the things that are most important are being a husband, being a dad, hopefully, eventually being a granddad. And so those are the things like our grit can cause us to like, and our success motivation and our sense of wanting to accomplish and wanting to achieve can cause us to, without rhythms, can cause us to lean into things that are going to help us build an organization, maybe help us build a church, but not build that longevity in our personal lives that we want, where we want that like great relationship with our 26-year-old because we've made choices, rhythms along the way to ensure that relationship long term.
What have been, can you think of a couple offhand rhythms that you put in place that really helped you either with either longevity in your leadership, or you mentioned your relationships with your kids, but like what were some high impact rhythms that you put in place in your own world?
Yeah, I think, a couple that come to mind leadership wise, like in the workplace. One would be I have limited time. So in a large organization, you can't spend your time with everyone. So like choosing like who I'm going to spend my time with, which by default chooses who you're not going to spend your time with. But I think, figuring out who am I going to pour my time and also by default, like who I'm spending time with, they're spending time with me. So they're influencing me. I'm influencing them. That's going to make a big difference in my leadership. I think I mentioned earlier about the meetings. I think like just rhythms in meetings is really important. Like for me, and everyone's wired differently. For me, I tend to stack when I can, stack my meetings all on the same day or day and a half. And that just lets everyone else get their jobs done, lets me get my job done. It kind of just frees up margin. But I also need space and time to think and to dream and to plan. And if I'm, if I just have people in my office all the time, that's not going to be possible. I think rhythms personally, like years ago when we have 2 girls and 2 boys, and the girls are oldest. So when the girls were, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years old, we started having, daddy date nights. And we just kept that going until they were gone. With the boys, we called it guy time instead of date night, but just finding, and for me, if I just, wasn't a ton, but if I could find time on the calendar once a month for each of my 4 kids individually, and maybe that's sitting for 2 hours and playing a video game with the boys, or having, one of the girls dress up when we go out on a date, whatever it is, it's like, it's not so much the what, it's more of like the rhythm of carving the time for that. And the same thing with my wife with date nights. And even now that we're empty nesters, we still try to prioritize that.
Nice. And I could see where it would be accidentally easy to get caught up in the grit. And then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, when's the last time I had breakfast with my kid? Or when's the last time I had a date night?
And I think this is true in any work, if you love your work, but it's especially true in the church, where your sense of like, man, if I just stay 2 more hours, I can help this couple through their rocky marriage, or I can help, this person with a, spiritual kind. Like there's there's like eternal spiritual things that kind of like are part of your work that you just think, man, if I give more time to this, more impact will happen. And I just think through like what happens when 10 years in you flame out and then all of that goes away. Or you lose your marriage, maybe not actually, but emotionally, or you lose your kids in that, and they hate, they grow up and hate the church when they're done. So I just think that's not like, that's short-term thinking of like, man, if I just pour into this or just put more hours in or whatever. And we all have seasons we have to do that. So it's not like every day is the same number of hours, but I think like back to what we talked, just thinking through the long game and like, how do we make this sustainable and healthy for all of us long term?
This not just being the church or the business. It's this meaning me. I'm one whole person with a family. I have children. I have things that are important to me in different areas. Like this meaning you as a whole person, not just like me as a leader at the church or at work or me at home.
I've absolutely. And we're all having to balance that in ways where it's like, we're not, it can be easy to wrap yourself 100% around your family and forget about yourself and your own kind of health and growth as well. So it's like, we're kind of balancing all of that with all the relationships we have in our lives. And we try to get it right. And sometimes we don't, and then we try to get back on track.
Yeah. Interesting. You said, especially for people that love what they do, they can get caught up in that. And that, that's striking a chord with me. I love work. I love it. I can wake up and want to start it. And I'm a wonder and inventor. So I'm constantly like, oh, this, and let's go do this. And I love it. And one of my greatest fears is that my ambition will become like a detriment to my family. And so, and I'm a firm believer that, God gives you spiritual gifts, and a love of work, a passion for work and ambition is a gift. It's a gift, but the evil one will also try and use your gifts to bring you down. And so, that's, I struggle with that.
It's like there's a shadow side to every strength.
Yes.
Like we might have a towering strength, but there's probably a shadow side to it that if we let it overtake us, it's going to, hurt relationships or, hurt our values or hurt something that we're after.
Yeah. I'm almost hearing just from you is that boundaries might also be as important as rhythms for personal longevity.
Yeah. And I think like we can't draw those for anyone else, right? It's like you kind of figure that out. I'll give you an example. So back when the kids were at home, I didn't travel a ton because I was working with a local, specific local church, but I would travel a bit. And I just had to put like a boundary around travel away from the family. And then I'd reevaluate that every year with my boss and with my wife, and just say, okay, last year, let's say I traveled 28 days away from the family. How did that feel? Was that the right amount? Because I needed to do it some for my work. Was it too much? Was it, and just kind of like keep a pulse on that over time. And, now that kids are out of the house, that number's significantly higher than that with my work now, but I still track it. I still track every month, like how many days am I not sleeping in my own bed and how many days am I away from my family? And just so it can help me, because we can convince ourselves that, oh yeah, we're not gone that much, or, so it's just like I track a little spreadsheet and keep it. And then my wife and I talk about it every now and then, just to make sure that it's still in check. But I think that's like, me traveling 100, let's say, I don't know what it is right now, but 80 to 100 days a year would be the right boundary for me. It'd be the very significantly wrong boundary for someone who's got, 3 and 5 year olds at home. So, we can't draw boundaries for each other, but I think it's important to, have people, in your life, that you listen to. They're close enough to know you, that you listen to, and that they're close enough to know the things that they can speak into your life about. And then, in community, I think we make better decisions about personal boundaries and work boundaries and what we need to do there.
Are you someone that rhythms just kind of, it's very easy for you to stick to them and create. Like I'm listening, I'm going, I wonder if Tim's read Atomic Habits and he read it and was like, I gotta do this naturally. Like, is that, I don't know what your genius makeup is, but I'm listening to, like, when you said, yes, I have this boundary, and you've created a rhythm, whether or not you intentionally did that, on checking in with your leader and going through the travel and making sure you're sticking to those boundaries. And I'm listening, I'm like, oh, my husband is just as good as Tim at these things, and I am not. I'm like, I will come up with the rhythm in my head. It's like, okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to do this and this, and okay, I'm going to check in, I'm going to do this once a month, and then I have it, and then I'm like, I totally struggle to put it in place. So I'm curious, like, is it something that comes naturally to you, or have you figured out ways to follow through on your own rhythms?
For the most part, like I create a lot of systems because I don't wake up thinking those things, but I have a lot of, create a lot of systems so I don't miss the things that I've determined are important to me. Gotcha. I'm discernment and tenacity. So I think the tenacity side of me, the tenacity side, like it makes it a little bit maybe easier for me than for others to like, okay, make a decision and stick to it. But there are things in my life where it's like I make a decision, and if I didn't put a system to it or didn't tell anyone, like once I tell someone, like I'm just so stubborn, I'm gonna follow through. But like if I don't tell someone or I don't have a system around it, I can let that go by the wayside. So I have to kind of lead myself into those.
Okay, that explains it then. Why I was like, man, I'm listening to him going, this must come naturally for him, because it is hard for me. My frustrations are discernment and tenacity.
There you go.
And not that everything points back to working genius, but man, I just love when it does.
It's a good tool.
I just love when it does. Okay, I thought it would be fun and also helpful for listeners, and maybe even for you, and probably for me, just from that conversation, is to get really practical and figure out maybe even a framework or something that captures this idea of longevity. Thinking of, and we could use me as an example, but maybe let's go with a hypothetical leader that's out there. Maybe they're decades in and they're burnt out and they're hearing this message and they're like, oh, I've never, ever thought about systemizing the long game for me personally. So I'm curious. I've heard a few things. Obviously, rhythms is huge. I heard like boundaries, but I'm curious, what if we could nail down a few like core pillars of longevity? Like what few things come to mind? Like if you're okay, you sit down with a leader who's struggling with that. You get on a whiteboard and you draw this out. Like, what are you coaching them on?
Yeah, I think in the last few years, I'm becoming ever more aware of how important identity is. And like identity before output, like just knowing who you are at your core. And it's probably not that you're the CEO at such and such organization, or that you're a barista or whatever. I mean, that's part of what you do, but it's probably not part of your identity. So I think the more leaders can figure out their identity, like at their core, when everything falls away, and like who are they? That gives like a security and a confidence, and a sense of like I'm okay. Like if this all goes away, it's going to be fine. It's not who I am. Like I'm going to work my butt off, but it's not who I am. I remember that sense I was at one church for 20 years. And the church grew like crazy. That's a church that grew like 18 out of 20 years. And coming towards the end of that, when I decided to leave and move to Houston for a different role, I realized like my identity was like one and the same with that organization, because I'd helped build it and I was just there for, and I never planned to leave. And then suddenly it's like, I think I'm supposed to do something else. And just a sense of like, there's a scarcity mindset in that when your identity is not secure, and when it's like too much tied up with an organization or something outside of who you really are, a position. There's a scarcity in that. There's an insecurity in that. There's a fear in that. And then going to, I was about 6 years living in Houston, working for an executive search firm. And then worked on a church staff again, and a church staff that was, or a church that was in trauma, in organizational trauma. And in, everything was definitely down and to the right, significantly tanking, and realize walking into that just with a confidence of like, this isn't my identity. Like, I'm going to pour myself into here. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to help this organization turn around because I believe in it and I love it. But if it doesn't work, or they let me go, or it's fine. Like, it's not, this is not who I am. And it just gave us a different sense of, I keep coming back to security and confidence. So to me, like identity, when you asked like a pillar, like identity, like, and I'm 40 plus years into this. So like it requires some therapy and lots of time getting to know yourself, and a lot of, starts and stops of, especially like in my 20s and early 30s, of just like, you're just trying to figure out who you are. Yeah. And you think, but you realize later, like, I had no clue. And it just takes a while to land that. That's a big one for me.
What else?
Yeah, I think it kind of ties into that as well. But a sense of, I think with identity comes self-awareness, which is another one that I think is a pillar. And I always think it's interesting talking about self-awareness, because we can acknowledge that in someone else, like they're either self-aware or they're not self-aware, and you can kind of see that pretty clearly. I think by definition, we can't see it in ourselves. So we have to have, people like, what are your blind spots? It's like, well, if I knew, there wouldn't be blind spots.
That's a good point.
So I think you have to have then that community of trusted people around you, and people that can really speak into your life. And none of us need like critics who don't know us, who are just kind of, shooting shots from a distance. But we do need people who are like really close to us and who we've allowed and invited in to speak into our life. And they help us with that, help us become more self-aware. Because I think none of us are 100% self-aware. So I think we can all grow on that. I think another one, this ties into it as well, but another one would just be like just emotional health, relational health. I see a lot of parents in my phase of life where the kids are either getting ready to or have already left home. And some of our identity, back to identity, was caught up in how we parented them, and, how much they became ambassadors of our family DNA, and then suddenly they're not. And then suddenly they're making some choices or relationships or decisions that we would not have recommended. And then our identity, like we go through our identity there, it's like, well, who am I? Like, what did I do wrong? And all this stuff. And I think like, figuring that out and realizing that, for parents that are in my stage of life, figuring out that, like, you do everything you possibly can, and then you kind of leave it in God's hands, and then you're there. You're just there. And so you're not like, we stop making statements the older the kids get, and we start asking questions, and we start leaning into when they're kind of like especially soft and open to input. So I think like emotional health, relational health, I think that's important. And the last one I'll mention, which goes back to one of the other chapters that you referenced, is just when you said one of the chapters was everyone's an interim. And I think that ties into self-awareness, that ties into identity, that ties into health, of just like, if I know in whatever I'm leading, if I know I am only here for a season, maybe a 20-year season, maybe a 6-month season, but I know I am not going to be here forever. This organization is going to outlast me. If it's relationships with kids, it's like, I've got so many years to pour into them until they're no longer under my care. So whatever it is, it's like, I am an interim. And I think, like, to me, like when that shifted in my brain, it's like, I'm not trying to accomplish everything. It kind of like gives a little sense of like maybe the urgency falls off, because like, I'm not trying to accomplish everything. I'm trying to leave this place better than when I got here. I'm trying to pour into people and leave them better than before we were working together. and I'm going to be used for this, this short period of time in this person's life or this organization's life. I'm going to do everything I possibly can, and then someday it will be someone else. And I think if we think that way, it just, for me, it changes how I lead.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm drawing all this out just because, I'm a WI and that's what I do, right? I can't help myself. Tim, I can't help myself.
We need you.
I know. Okay. So you said 3 core things, and then there was a little sneaky one in there that I was like, that might be a 4th here. So we're going to ID loop this. I heard identity, who you are at your core, self-awareness around that. Really, self-awareness is kind of in all these.
Yeah.
And then I heard relational and emotional health. I wrote down seasonal awareness, or season. It's a perspective thing, spiritual perspective, seasonal awareness, but I am the interim kind of mentality. And then you also said the community of trust, like having a strong, maybe that fits into relational health. I don't know what you think, but having people who can speak wisdom into you, can call you on those blind spots, can hold you accountable.
Yeah. I think that's, I've heard people, I'm trying to think of who authors and speakers have talked about every leader needs a board of advisors, a board of personal advisors. Not sure who coined that, but, and I don't have like a formal board of advisors, but I definitely have people around me that I've invited to speak into my life, to my business, to my leadership, to my marriage. And that's, like, I don't know, it would be tough to, it'd be tough to not have that. And it doesn't have to be, like in a church context, it's like, well, it's my small group or my Bible study. And it's like, maybe that's it. And we've had seasons where that's been it. But it takes different forms. I just think it takes some intentionality for us as leaders to think, okay, who is that? Do I have 2 or 3 people that can really, that are close enough, proximate enough to know enough about me to be able to speak into my life and help me. Sometimes it's proactive and I'm saying, hey, I have to make a big decision. Can you help me figure this out? Other times it's just observation. And they're like, hey, do you know what it was like to be on the other side of you in that conversation? You were a little toasty or a little caustic or like, what's going on? Like, people like that, man, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. I love that. I think that, for any leader, really any human, let's say leader, because it's a leadership podcast, but I'm going to be applying this to myself. If focusing on the long game personally is something that is important to you, what I'm hearing is, hey, get really clear on your identity, which is not a fast exercise. Get really clear on your community, the people who in this season that you're in, 2, 3 people that you've got that are in your corner with you. Get really clear on your relational health, like what relationships are the most important in your world, doing kind of a health audit around that. Your own emotional health as well. And then this idea of this, I'm an interim, seasonal. What season am I in right now? Getting clarity around those things, and then creating rhythms, boundaries to make sure that you are staying focused on those. Would that be a fair kind of a summary of longevity and leadership? Did we get there, Tim?
That's, you pulled it out of me and then put it in a little map. So
I did.
That makes
I did. I have a map.
I do think I love it.
It's a very messy map. It needs a shape. It needs like a pyramid.
Well, as a WI, I'm sure you'll be dwelling on that for days to come, and you'll come up with something better.
Too many days. It'll be too many shapes, too many days. So I asked a mutual friend of ours, who's your colleague at Leading Smart, and then also your podcast host. I said, Holly Tate. I pinged Holly and I said, hey, I am going to be interviewing Tim for the podcast and connecting with him. What question would you want to ask Tim? Like something she would ask you if she were here that she's curious about. Okay, you ready? She says, what's the book you've always wanted to write, but you haven't because you don't think anyone would want to read it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay. Holly and I have been doing life together for 12 plus years, probably. So she knows a lot about me. And I haven't written a book for 6, 7 years, something like that. So it's been a bit. Um, so probably what she wants me to say is the one she's trying to talk me into writing.
She's sneaky.
She is sneaky. That I have probably said out loud, will anyone really buy that? But honestly, the books I've written, I haven't really cared a whole lot. I mean, to the publisher's chagrin, probably. I haven't really cared so much about sales. For me, it's more about kind of like getting this out of my head and onto paper, and then being able to use it as a tool to help people individually. But I have one of the 40 lessons, I think, towards the end, and someone asked me recently, if you could only pick one, which would you pick? The one I picked was believe the best. And I just think in this like polarized world that we live in, and not just polarized politically, but polarized with our friendships and our conversations and our parenting styles and our theology or whatever, we often ascribe to people motives, intention that is negative. And we want people to believe the best in us, but too quickly, most of us, just because we're human, don't believe the best in others. We assume the worst. We assume the most negative. And for me, that's just become a lifelong, it does not come natural, but I try to think about it. And especially in difficult relationships or people that you don't align with, and you're trying to listen, and like, it's just like one of my favorite phrases is, tell me more. Like when someone says something and it's like, based on your context or worldview or whatever, it seems like completely outlandish, instead of like coming after them or whatever, or even just instead of ending the conversation, it's like, let's be curious. Like, just tell me more. Like what in, at the core, like what in your life, brought you to that conclusion or to that thought? Because I want to know, I want to see it through your lens. I mean, I'm probably not going to change my position, but I want to see it through your lens. And so that's something Holly and I've talked about of writing a book around this concept of believing the best.
Well, I am Team Holly on this one. I think you need to write it. I think that's a wildly powerful message for everyone in every aspect, not just church, not just leadership, not just work, not just parenting. Like that is very relevant, like you said.
Yeah, it has been for me and for my life. So maybe it would be for others.
I love that she was sneaky and asked you a question, and now she has forced some public accountability on you, that people will listen to this and be like, oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, she's sneaky.
She's sneaky. So you and Holly always end your podcast with a fun segment.
Yes.
So I like to do that too. So we're going to do it. I'm just going to hit you with just a quick lightning round of some fun questions, just to see what your fun first answers are.
So first answer. Okay.
Yes. Okay. What ranks higher on your list of proud accomplishments? Writing your first book or winning a national championship in French horn?
The book, for sure. Oh. That's interesting that you had that little tidbit of information.
Oh, I for sure was hoping you'd say French horn, but that's okay. First book. I get it.
No one told me that the French horn has no value in life past high school band. So I poured way too much time into it as a young person that I could have poured into other things.
Well, maybe that was one piece of discernment I had in my life, that I stopped the French horn after the 6th grade.
Okay, so you maybe do have a strength in discernment.
That was it, though. It peaked and then it's gone. Okay, when you think back to your days as a high tenor in a Southern Baptist quartet, what skill from that season helped you become a better teammate in a work environment?
Oh, okay. So probably doing something that I'm not the best at, because I was not a great singer, but other people said, we need you in that role. And so probably like, yeah, I've never thought about that, but probably the skill is like, okay, like if people see it and I can deliver something that they need, even if I don't feel like I'm the most accomplished at it, just go for it.
Get in there. Did you actually wear the stripes like the suit and the
We
straw
didn't
hat.
wear stripes. We wore suspenders. We wore bow ties. I don't know that we ever did the hats, but it was a
Is
thing.
there a picture out in the universe of this? I feel like
I
we need to see it.
there are pictures. I don't know that. I think they're probably in my basement in a box.
Okay. Era Parsegan, Lou Holtz, Brian Kelly. Which one takes the cake for you?
Lou Holtz, absolutely. Era maybe, but he was before my era, different era. So I didn't ever follow him. But Brian Kelly's dead to me. Lou Holtz was awesome, and Marcus Freeman's could become the greatest coach that ever lived.
Wow. It seems like you have.
And we're talking Notre Dame football, in case anyone doesn't know.
We're talking Notre Dame football. It sounds like that's a little bit of a bitter subject for you, the current state of the strong words.
I was not sad to see Brian Kelly fired from LSU.
Oh my goodness. Okay, final question for you, Tim. You published the ebook, which is free and available on leadingsmart.com. I highly recommend anybody go right now, download it. It's a quick read, and there's a great resource or a bonus tool for each of the lessons. So you published 40 lessons in 40 years in 2025. It is now 2026. So what's one lesson that you hope to learn this year?
Oh, a 41st lesson.
The 41st lesson.
Well, I just before this podcast came off the pickleball court, so I definitely want to get better playing pickleball. That's probably not a life lesson, but there are lessons involved in becoming better at pickleball. I think that's a great question. That's not a lightning round question. That's a deep question.
I know. I might need to rephrase
that's okay though.
The title of the segment.
I think okay. So I don't know if this directly answers the question, but it comes to mind. A passion that I want to become great at. A passion is like I'm 58 years old. I am no longer building my own career. I don't have ambitions to start something new. So to me, like all of my success for the rest of my working life is pouring into younger leaders and like doing everything I can to help them and younger organizations and younger teams. So I know there's lessons in that I need to learn. I know that that's aspirational. I'm trying to do that, but that's aspirational, but I want to keep trying. I want to keep working at that and pouring into young leaders and like helping them build their thing, their resume and their core identity and their sense of something that they can sustain in for a long time. So I don't know what the lesson is there, Heather, but I know I've got lessons to learn there.
Awesome. Well, Tim, it was such a pleasure to have you on. So wonderful to meet you and connect with you. And I, when I finish WIing on the state of this model, I will send it to you, and
I love that.
can use it and feel free to not even credit it. You can just take it and run with it. And
I think illustrated by
and maybe it'll be Believe the Best. Maybe it'll be in the book there.